make the best possible presentation we can today so that you get the most out of this. But I am Denise Benton with United Way of Graham and Greenlee Counties. I am the Executive Director for our organization. With me today is our grant manager, Amanda Patterson. And she is the one who actually, as our grants come in, she's watching those like a hawk, and she's the one that picks through them to see if she sees anybody going sideways, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we do the presentation. But we're delighted to be with you here today. We also have our board president, Laura Durrell, / photographer, Laura Durrell, here with us today. And she'll be filming. We want to put the grant application and this presentation on our website so that people have an opportunity to go onto the website too and actually pick through our application and see what it looks like. So we try to make the process as easy as we possibly can. So welcome to all of you today. I'm pretty sure most of you know about United Way. You hear about us all the time. But United Way is a worldwide organization, and we are a nonprofit organization who funds other nonprofits. We do not do that funding with our money. The money that we use to do that funding is from very dedicated and generous donors, from Freeport, the company, from the Freeport employees, from the City of Stafford employees, and from private donors who donate money with the intent of that money going out into our communities and making a difference in the programs and projects and events that happen in our communities that benefit our communities in both Graham and Greenlee counties. We have 3 focus areas. The first is education, so we're glad you're here today. The second is health, and the third is economic stability. So any grants we fund or that we consider have to fall into one of those 3 focus areas. That's the first thing we always look at for grants to determine whether they fall into our focus areas. So that's the real small version of what we do. I know NOAA has been funded by us, so we have some successful grantees here today. Who else has been funded before by United Way? Tell me your name.
Brittany Cloppingham.
Oh yes, I remember your name. Yes,
that was recent.
So was NOAA. So congratulations. We're excited.
Thank you.
That was one of our small $5,000 grants. We'll talk about those too as we go along. So anybody else? Great. Well, we're glad you're here today, and thank you for submitting those applications because we really do want to support the educational programs in our communities. What we thought we would do this morning is start out by telling you, I did post our website information on the board because we will give you an opportunity to log into our website. If you'd like to do that now, that might be a good time to do that because we're going to highlight some things on our website first, and then we'll actually give you an opportunity to log into the link where you can go to get into our actual full-blown grant application. But there's a few things we want to show you on the website first. And then also down below that, in case you didn't catch that, those are both mine and Amanda's email addresses. So if you want to jot those down, we've also put some business cards at the front today before you leave in case you need to reach us for any questions. Okay? So GrahamGreenleeUnited.org is the website. And so this is what our homepage looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Amanda, who's the grant expert, to I think we'll go ahead and start with the grant application page because that's really what we'll focus on today. Previously, we had some different, more restricted grant cycles, and we've changed that. So again, all of our grants have to fall into 3 focus areas: education, health, or economic stability. However, you can apply for any type of grant in one of those focus areas in any one of our 4 cycles. So whatever time of year works best for you, you can fall into one of those cycles, and we feel like that's a lot less restrictive, and it's worked really well so far this year. So our first cycle of the year opens January 1st and goes through February 1st. The second cycle opens March 1st and goes through April 1st. That one we just finished, and those are, I believe, Brittany, wasn't that the one you were funded in NOAA as well? I think both of them were funded in cycle 2. And then cycle 3 just opened on June 1st, and the deadline for that is July 1st. And then our 4th cycle is September 1st to October 1st. And so those are the 4 grant cycles. You have any one of those opportunities to apply for grants with United Way, except for the $5,000 grant. We'll talk about those in a minute. Those we do monthly, okay? Also, I'll scroll up a little bit. Just down below that, that gray box that says click here to apply, that's the actual link that you'll click on to get into our grant application when we get to that in a moment. So we do a few different things. We do big grants, which we'll talk about today. Those are larger than $5,000. But we do have grant requests available for $5,000 or less. Paulette will be doing a session on those tomorrow morning at 10:15. So be prepared to sign up for that if you're interested in those. What happens is we address those on a monthly basis every month of the year except for December, because we don't have a board meeting in December. So that's the only reason we don't do them in December. And what we ask is that those requests be submitted to either myself or Amanda by the 10th of the month. What that does is it allows us to gather information and see if there's anything missing from your grant and get that information out to our board members before our monthly board meeting. So those have to be to us by the 10th of the month. We want it on your organization's letterhead, so your school district's letterhead. We want you to tell us the amount you're requesting, up to $5,000, with a detailed explanation of how the funds are going to be used. Tell us about your program or your project, whatever it is you're doing. And then we want a detailed program or project budget. And what we have is we actually have a template we want you to use for that. That way it's all very consistent. We get the same information from everybody. It doesn't leave you wondering, should I include this? Should I not include that? We're trying to use a real consistent budget template. We try to make it as simple as possible. So, oops, that's what that budget template looks like. And we want you to include things like, what kind of income does your project have now? Sometimes school teachers use PTO funds or something like that for projects that might be part of the funding they're using. If you have any in-kind, if somebody's donating materials or donating time, those kinds of things, you can include those in the in-kind. And then we want to know what your expenses are going to be, supplies, materials, and equipment for what your project is. And so that's link is right there ready for you to use. And we tried really hard to keep it simple. We also do sponsorships, which really won't apply too much to you. What sponsorships are for are actually events in the community. There's a number of events that fall into our focus areas that we support that happen maybe once a year. And so we'll do sponsorship funding to help them put on those events. And there's a number of those that we do. We do have emergency funding available, but we look at those on a case-by-case basis because we don't know COVID, the flooding in Duncan. We've had a number of emergencies we've had to consider just at last minute. So those we just handle as they arise, of course. And then also on that same page, it talks about the items that United Way of Graham and Greenlee counties will fund and the things we will not fund. These are what we call our standing rules or funding guidelines. So, and I won't go into those in too much detail, but I wanted to let you know it is on the website. It's available for you there whenever you're ready to look at it in the event you're questioning something you might be asking for in your project budget. So for most of you, I don't think a lot of that's going to fall into our don'ts. Most of yours will fall into our do's. So I don't think you'll be in too much trouble, but there is that if you need it. Okay? So any questions so far? All right. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and have Amanda click on that login link. And if you'd like to, you don't have to, but if you'd like to follow along just to kind of get a feel for what it looks like. And then when you initially go in, of course, we already have an account, but when you initially go in, you're going to create a new account. And if you'd like to go ahead and click on that, you can actually set up your account just to go in and play with it right now. You're not doing anything wrong. It's not submitting an actual request. We just want you to be able to go in and put your information in and see what that feels like. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that in case you want to play along with this. And if you just want to put bogus information in there, that's fine. Or this is just a practice application for using. Let me know if anybody's running into a glitch again.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
Thanks. We're going to start down here. And just put whatever you want in there just to get you past that screen. in. This isn't a requirement, but we want you to be able to have a feel for it. One thing we've tried really hard to do is make our application as user-friendly as we possibly can. And of course, this is me speaking for United Way, but I feel like in this whole scheme of grant applications, and Paulette can probably speak to that, that our grant application is one of the friendlier ones. It's not too complicated. The other advantage I feel like you have with the United Way grant application is you have Amanda and I there. And we are always available if you run into a technical glitch, if you have a question about, you know, am I allowed to include this or not, or that's our job to help you with that. So be sure to reach out to us. Don't hesitate to do that, because you don't always have that advantage with every organization who does grant funding. So we'd like you to have an opportunity to do that. Don't ever hesitate. Nothing's a silly question, because we want to help our grantees be as successful as they can. That's our goal, is to get that grant as pretty as it can be before it gets to our board, so that it's as clear as possible and they don't have a lot of glaring questions when it gets to them, because we don't want to waste their time and we want to get you funded as quickly as we can. So, okay, everybody at a point where we're ready to move forward? Okay. All right, so when you get to, have you all gotten to the page where you can see that training application? Okay, go ahead and you'll click on the training only application, and you actually click on the apply word. And you're going to say you're going to apply for yourself. That may not always be the case, but that's what we're going to use here. Okay, this first question here, one of the reasons this is important is because we can only fund grant funding to any organization or school or municipality. We can only do that once per year. What happens sometimes is there are different projects within a year. So we can only fund, I should say we can only fund each project once per year. So say you're doing different projects in a year. You've already been funded once, but this is a whole different project. We're going to look at that as a whole new request. We won't fund the same project more than once in a year. Most of the organizations we fund send us one big grant request for the full year. It covers all of their programs. But in your cases, it may be something that teachers do different programs and lessons and projects all the time. So if you say yes to that question that you've been funded in the last year, it's going to boot you out, because it's going to say, no, you can't do that more than once a year. But if you know when you go in to do that you were funded in the past year, but this is a whole different project, you can say no to that question. So we'll let you move forward. That's one of the common calls we get. Is I said yes, I was funded because my year's not up, and it booted me out. That's one of the common questions we get from people. And this, of course, it will always tell you what your deadline is for submission. This is just a practice application, so we went ahead and put the same date that our current grant cycle is expiring. And then this is what the first page of the application looks like, and it gives you some information about what's required of you if you were to submit a big grant to United Way of Green Counties. One of the things we require is we require impact reporting. So what happens is you'll have a grant period per se, and usually it's a year. Like you'll say your grant fund is going to go from, August 1st to August 1st of the following year. Once that year is up, what we want you to do, and we will actually send your information on to a company called True Impact. They're our impact reporting partner. And what they do is they will reach out to you and they will help guide you through that impact reporting process. That's required when you do a large grant with us. And they will walk you through that process. You have to do a forecast of what you're intending to do, kind of a midway through report on how it's going so far. Is it going good? Is it, have you run into some obstacles? Has your plan changed? And then you'll do a final report. What that allows us to do is it allows us to gather data so that we can let our donors know what's happening with the dollars that they're so generous with funding to us. It also helps us know what programs are working and what are not. It helps you know whether your program was successful or not, and what you might need to change or try different next year. So you will also have a report available to you that will share all of that with you. That's a requirement. And if that True Impact report isn't done and you come back to us for funding in the future, we cannot fund you until those True Impact reports are done. It's very critical that we have that information. And so this page is what we call the dashboard. If you look at the bottom of that page and scroll down, There's several little boxes, and as you go through the grant application, it's going to chart your progress on how much of each section you have completed. You can save as you go along and go back to each section. That's not a problem, but it won't let you submit until all of those sections are complete. Okay, and it'll tell you your progress as you go along. So we're going to start with the first section, which is organization. And this talks about, of course, this would likely be your school district. And of course, this is kind of self-explanatory, name of the organization, the address. One of the questions in the middle of this page is important because it's asking, are you the executive director or the principal officer filling out this application? You probably aren't going to be as a teacher. You're going to say no to that because you're filling out the grant application, but someone else is going to be fiscally responsible for those dollars. It's not probably going to be you. It's probably going to be the school district. And so for teachers, probably the answer to that is going to be no. If the answer to that question is no, there's a form link you can see at the bottom of that says we want the executive director or the principal officer to fill out a form that tells us we're aware this teacher's filling out this grant application. District by district, the rules change, and some districts are really strict about not allowing us to actually give out the money until their school board votes to approve it or something like that. We've also had grants that were funded that we've had administrators come back to us and say, I didn't know anything about this. And they were a little bit upset. So this would be probably either your building principal or school superintendent would work with. Somebody in the district needs to be aware of what you're doing and let them know what's going on. So they would be the ones filling out that form. And there's a link right to it. So that form is nice and consistent. They just fill that out and they can submit it. And so of course you're going to put their, if you're not the executive director, which you wouldn't be, you'll put their information there and then they'll complete that form. You would be the primary contact for the proposal though, because you're the one doing the proposal. You're the one that if we have questions, we can reach out to and say, what did you mean by this? What exactly are you going to do with that? Or how long are you doing the project? Or whatever the question might be. So we want you to put your name there. And we want your contact information and your email. And if your mailing address is different than what you put at the top, be sure and give us your mailing address. Normally with school district funding or educator funding, we're going to send the check to the school district. So we really probably want you to use the school district mailing address. What we've run into with other organizations we fund is the person filing for the grant isn't necessarily where we're going to send the money. So we need to know what the actual mailing address is. And then if there's a secondary contact, if you're working with someone else, you can include that. And then this talks about the background of your organization. Like I said, this screen's pretty self-explanatory. School, you're going to see a school district, your mission, the school's mission statement, the number of years in operation, the year it was founded, tax ID number. And then this asks for a staff roster. This is typically your school board. For teachers, it would be your school board. That's who you can upload there. Because if you put your staff roster, you're going to have a whole bunch of teachers and support staff and all kinds of things that are there in there. So just put your board staff roster there. This next section is your organization's financial documents, and this is where you're going to upload your budget for your organization's budget. It can be in Excel or PDF format, and we try to make that as easy as possible. Some people are not Excel people. Some people like to do their budget and then upload it as a PDF. We're fine with that. We'll take it however you send it, but we do need a detailed budget. That's a requirement. And then do you have a 990? 990s are for nonprofit organizations that have a 501c3 tax status. So in your case, that would be a no. So.
Denise?
Yes.
I know classroom teachers who are in the four walls of their room all day do not spend much time on that, what do I say, moving and shaking with that first page. Use your business manager because you don't know what the organizational budget is. So, and use your school superintendent because you probably don't know what your mission statement is in the history of your organization. It's asking you to think beyond your classroom. So use the resources that you have available. That's a tough page for classroom teachers to fill out.
Yeah, and you're correct because it's really geared more toward, like I said, an organization, that has Yeah, you're gonna have to reach out to your financial,
Yeah.
the people at your district that do the finance part of it for you. But thank you, Paulette, that's a good.
That's usually what scares them off.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't let that intimidate you. And when you, again, when you come across that, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, where do I get all, call us. And we'll tell you, call your district office. They'll help you with it. They'll get you the information you need. So, and of course, you will have already talked to either your building principal or your superintendent or something about, so it's no surprise to them that you're doing this. So they'll be willing to help you out, especially if they think it's gonna help you in the classroom. Their job is to help support you that way. Next section is the program information. This is where you give us information about what you're actually doing. Your program title. Paulette's grants always have really cool titles. You can make a really cool title, but we're gonna take what we get. We're not gonna ding you for not having a really cool, awesome, catchy
I like
title.
clever titles.
She does like her catchy titles, so, and super fun, but we're gonna take what you get. We have things as simple as, you know, math manipulative project or whatever, it doesn't matter. You put what you feel good about. And then the amount requested, you'll just put the amount you're requesting there. And the start and end date of your project is when you actually think you're gonna implement that in your classroom. When's it gonna start? When's it gonna be finished? It might be a semester-long program or whatever. That's what you're gonna put in those sections. And then you're gonna tell us which impact area, because remember we have 3 focus areas, so it has to fall within one of those, and obviously yours is going to be education. And when you click on education, it's going to automatically bring up, as Paulette addressed yesterday, if you were in her session yesterday, she talked about us having 5 priorities in that focus area. And you're gonna tell us where your program falls, which focus area or which priority those fall into for us. A lot of them, really, in all honesty, I agree with Paulette when she said that yesterday. More times than not, the educator grants that we see fall into the providing direct support to teachers in the classroom by helping cultivate innovative learning environments and approaches. CETA itself, this conference, falls more into sustaining and recruiting teachers. But yours are primarily going to fall into that. If they don't, they don't, but that's probably where you're going to land most of the time for teacher grants. And then sometimes you might be doing something innovative or something where you're collaborating with maybe your grade level of teachers. That would be a collaboration, or maybe you're collaborating with someone in the community that you're having come in and do something with your kids to teach them about something, maybe agriculture, or maybe you're having them come in and talk about, you know, fabrication or something like that, and you're partnering with somebody else, and you could tell us about that there. And most of your types of requests, most of the ones we see are going to be project and program funding, and that's what yours will be. And then you're going to talk about how your project or your program supports our impact area. How does it support education? And how does it support those innovative learning environments, or whatever it was you selected in that box above. So you're going to tell us about how that supports that. You're going to justify how that supports that. Your program description, this is the part where you're going to talk about what the issue is in your classroom. You know, I'm a new teacher and I started a classroom and the teacher before me took all of my books or whatever, and so I'm needing to rebuild my library or whatever. That happens. Or I was left without, you know, proper seating or whatever it is you might be doing. You're going to tell us about what the issue is. What is the issue that's happening? And then down below that, you're going to describe the need for it. And Paulette said yesterday, this is where you want to make them cry. You want to make us feel like, what is it that's so important about this that is creating the need? The example I used yesterday, and our president couldn't speak to this, we just had a grant this past cycle. We had firefighters that had outdated breathing apparatuses. I mean, tell me that doesn't tug at your heartstrings. So that's where they would have put that there. You know, we've got 40 firefighters who have outdated tanks and, you know, and masks and whatever. That's what you're going to put in that section. And then what are your goals? How many kids do you anticipate reaching? What do you want the kids to do as a result of the funding that we're going to provide? And then it would be a good thing here if you wanted to talk about how you're going to evaluate that. You know, are you going to do testing? Are you going to do surveys? What are you going to do to evaluate that? You would put what your intended goal is and what kind of things how do you intend to evaluate that to see if you actually attained your goal or not. And your impact report is going to speak to that too, because you've got that impact report you have to do. So That's going to speak to that as well. And then if you have any in-kind donations, in-kind can be in cash or like donation of time. So if you've got somebody coming into your classroom that's donating time to come in and speak to your kids about X, Y, or Z, that's in kind. They're giving of their own time to do that. There's a value to that, and we want to know about that. Also, if anybody's making any additional donations, you can talk about that to us. And if you're collaborating, you would talk about your collaborations in that next section. And then the next section is your project budget. That's different than your organizational budget. This is all you here. This is going to talk about what your actual needs are. And your total project budget may be higher than what you're asking us for. Of course, maybe you're getting money from somewhere else. But you're going to tell us what is your total project budget, and then that section is where you'll be able to upload your project budget that talks specifically about your project and your needs for that project that you're doing. And again, that can be an Excel or PDF format, whatever you're most comfortable with. So we're going to ask that you download that budget for us. Who will be served? You're going to talk about your students and the demographics, the numbers, all of those kinds of things.
On the budget, is there a specific form you want us to use? I don't see one.
There's none. You can use any, as long as it's clear
Okay.
and complete. That's all we care about for that. It can be any form that you'd like to use. Will your organization be able to implement the project with only partial funding? And that happens sometimes. If you send us a request and you ask for, $25,000, and we're thinking, well, we like this part of the project, but we're not so sure about this. What you're going to tell us is, if we only decided to partially fund you, could you still do the whole thing? And we want you to be really honest about that, because there are times we've looked at things and said, well, we don't know if that really doesn't fall into our standing rules, but the rest of it does. We want to know your story, because our board needs to know how that's going to impact you if they decided to do some kind of partial funding. And we have partially funded some programs, but oftentimes we fully fund them, but sometimes we have partially funded. This is really important to include a list of other grant requests, because what that tells us is that you've got other people who are supporting you in your efforts, and it speaks to sustainability of your program if it's going to be kind of an ongoing thing. It tells us that you put some effort into making sure that you've exhausted all your resources. With teachers, it's not as it's probably not as common as it is with other organizations, because they're looking at all other types of funding. But we do want you to list any other grant requests or any other funding that you've requested. That's helpful for us to know.
And that's not a part we have to put, they're not going to make.
Yeah, if there's not one, if you haven't done any other funding, then you'll just put not applicable or no other funding requested. And that's not a deal breaker for us, by the way. So if you didn't, then just tell us that. It's not always a deal breaker, so don't be afraid to do that. What we often see is we see the grantees, they'll list, like I'll use Freeport as an example, because Freeport, FMI does some grant funding. So they'll put FMI, community grant, and they'll say funding pending, or you can say already funded. Funds being implemented, funds already being put toward this project, or you can put whatever you want there.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be pending.
No, it can actually be money you've already received, you're already using it, and it's the same project, and you're saying, hey, I've already got skin in the game here from somebody else.
Right.
I'm already using some of that money. I need additional funding to get it finished. Yeah, that's fine to do that. Okay, good question.
Denise, can you hold a second, just so I can see?
All right. This is where you're going to put and we changed this. This is one of the things we changed in the application specifically for educators, because it used to just say board of directors. Well, you don't have a board of directors. You have a governing board. So we made sure to change it out. That's going to be your board president's name, their contact information, and then the number of board members, the maximum number of board members required by your organization's bylaws. This, again, you may have to rely on your school district for, because you don't know all of that. That's not in your wheelhouse to know that.
But typically, a governing board in Arizona is 5.
Okay.
And go to a board meeting and count heads.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I hope you all have contacts at your district offices that you can reach out to and say, hey, I just have some quick questions. That's who you're going to reach out to for that. How much money did the board of directors or governing board contribute to the organization the most recent fiscal year? In a school district, that's probably not going to apply. So if you put a big 0 in there, we're gonna know why. Because how many of your board of directors go and say, hey, you know, Pima Unified Schools, I'm gonna give you $50,000, and I don't know that that happens.
The original answer is, I'm already doing this for free.
I'm just making a stab in the dark here, exactly, I'm already donating my time, so. Okay, and then the next section is any additional attachments. This is, Amanda was amazing, she went in and we used to have, how many?
We had 5.
5 slots where you can put attachments. You can put pictures, not a whole bunch of them. You can put pictures, you can put letters of support. If someone said, oh my gosh, this teacher's doing this amazing job, you should totally do this. You can put letters, you can put, if you have a flyer or something like that that you want to talk about. We used to only have 5 slots, and then we had people calling us saying, but I have all this other stuff I want to show you. So our amazing Amanda went in, I think we have 10?
We have
10 now. We can always add more, don't be shy. If you have a lot to tell us, don't worry. We will change it for you. We're always changing things, and she's really good at that. So you can upload anything you would like to there. We are going to ask, have you ever received previous funding from United Way of Graham and Greeley counties? A little different question. If you say yes, just kind of alerts us when we're looking for the application, because one of those things we always look at with every grant is if we funded you before and we're going through our initial screening, we're going to look at true impact and see if you did your impact report. It's a big fat red flag to us that we need to look back and say, we have a spreadsheet we keep, but that's a good heads up for us to say, hey, we've done funding before, we need to make sure they comply with the impact reporting.
But keep in mind that if you do have a different project, if you had a previous project and your year is not up yet and your reporting is not quite due, you still click yes, or you can say, yes, you did have it. But you reach out to me and say, well, our reporting isn't finished yet, isn't due. We have access to all that, so we can see that you're in the works of it. If there's something that you're kind of failing on, we can kick you a little bit. Be like, finish it up, get it wrapped up. But it won't stop you from a different project if that previous project reporting isn't 100% done, if your year isn't up. Now, if your year isn't up, or your year is up and you haven't done it yet, we're going to require that to be done before you get any other funding for any other project. So just keep that.
And I'm going to tell you, we really do try really hard to help our grantees as much as we possibly can. If we see you're in the danger zone on something, trust me, we're going to reach out to you. Amanda checks our list every day to see who's been starting grants. And if we see a grantee that's writing something, she can see them live as they go. And if we see, ooh, that's not one of our standing rules, that's outside of something we do, we can reach out to them and say, hey, that's not, we're watching your grant, that's not something we fund. Rethink your project a little bit, because we don't want that to be to get to the board and them say, that's not one of our standing rules. Not that they would say it that way, but if they did, we don't want that to happen. So we try really hard to keep you out of the danger zone. We do watch them. And this tells you to please upload a copy of your previous year's impact reporting. There is a way for you through True Impact, you can get your own little report, and that's your chance to upload that information for us. If you run into snags with that, let us know. Okay, we can always put you in touch with True Impact too, because sometimes that can be a little tricky. And those are just all of your uploads, of course. And then, okay, this last section, this is the certification and signature, and of course, most of you are not the fiscal agent for your organization. You're the teacher, and your district is going to be financially responsible for what happens with those funds. So this is where we want you to put, where we want your principal superintendent to say, hey, I say if this money's granted, it's going to be spent like it's been proposed in this project. They're not going to do something totally different. They're not going to get off into the weeds on something and not do something they're supposed to be doing. So that's just certifying that that's going to happen. And then that's their signature. So, and I know it looks really, I know grants are intimidating sometimes, but we don't want you to be intimidated. I can only speak for us when I say if you're going to do a grant that's larger than $5,000 and you're using this system, which is what we're doing, then at any point in that process, reach out to us, okay? The $5,000 or less grants that I was reading to you, those are just simply a letter and a budget. Those are a lot simpler, and Paulette will be giving you all the ins and outs of those and telling you what magic words to use and what kind of things to do. And I'm so excited about those because predominantly what we see are teachers that are asking for those.
How much money have you given away
To a teacher, the largest amount, to school districts, we've given, we just did a grant for, it was $113,000. To a teacher individually, that's probably one of the larger education ones I've seen actually. Yeah.
I got a pretty, well, I got to make that for,
Yeah.
flexible seating.
Okay. Yeah. And no, was yours the full 5,000? Okay, I couldn't remember yours. And those are brand new ones that we just funded, I believe, this last cycle, so.
I've seen some over the years. There was one close to 20,000, and it was for pianos in South High School.
Mhm.
So there's no, the plus about this is there's no ceiling to it.
Mhm.
You decide how much money you really need, and if you can defend it,
Mhm.
they're not going to say, well, that's too expensive. I doubt that they would pass judgment on that. If you can
And,
defend it.
and also, just to kind of, this is probably really boring to you, but it's really important for you to know, we have a lot of safety nets in place for the people who apply for grants through United Way of Grand and Greenland counties, because what we initially do when the grants come in, Amanda watches them like hawk. It's like her hobby. She loves it. Every day she's like, we've got 2, we've got 4. And I say, who are they? We're like cheerleaders and we get all excited when we find out who they are. It's just kind of a weird thing we do, but it's fun every day. That's how we start our day. So, but we watch them as they come in, and then when the grant cycle ends, when July 1st happens and those grants are submitted, you can't submit them after July 1st. So once they're submitted, then the first thing we do is Amanda and myself, and we have 2 other of our board members who are on what we call our grant review committee. And the first thing we do is we get together and we screen those. We go through and just scrape through them like, and it sounds terrible, but we're looking for every possible pitfall in that thing for you. We're doing that for you. Amanda and I do not get to vote. Our board members are the ones who vote on the grants. We do not get a vote. So we are the advocates that say, we want to make this look as good as it can before it gets there. So it's like this challenge for us to make them as pretty as they can before they get there. So we do our initial screening of them, and we make sure it meets our standing rules. We make sure that it doesn't, that falls in one of the focus areas. We look at, is the budget really a clear budget? Do we have a clear idea of what's happening here? We look at if there's anything missing in the grant. You can't submit it if there's something missing, but if something, there's just words there and it's really not answering a question or providing information, we're going to reach out to you. So we do that initial, we have a sit-down meeting where we go through every single grant together, and then we do an initial reach out to you. If you don't hear from us, that means you're probably looking pretty good. But then we're going to reach out and say, hey, you know, we had some questions on your budget. Could you revamp your budget, make it a little more detailed for us? Or I noticed that you said you were collaborating with so-and-so. Could you do a letter of support or something like that, whatever it might be. But we're going to reach out if we see anything that looks a little funky when we look at it at first. So we do that. Then we have what we call our Community Grant Advisory Committee. And they're not board members, they don't vote on the grants, but they're members of the community that come from all different areas of our community. Some of them are educators, we have a rancher, we have a county supervisor, a librarian. We have a variety of people on that committee, and what they do is they come together and they look at the grants. And they do the same thing. So we're having other eyes that are experts in different areas look at those and say, what do we think's missing? What questions do we have? And if they have questions, we might reach out further and say, oh, I never thought of that. We had the rancher tell us one time, it was a grant for an equestrian therapy program. And one of her questions was about the animals and liability insurance and those kind of things, because animals are animals and you never know what animals are going to do. And none of us had ever even thought of that because we're not ranchers and we don't think about things like big animals running somebody over. We weren't even thinking about that. But she had very good questions about how are we going to make sure that if we fund this, these people in our programs are going to be safe, you know, because our name is involved with this. So they think of things outside the box that we're not necessarily thinking of. So then we reach out again and say, if they have questions, we reach out and we gather information from them. And then we put it all together, and that's when we send them out to the board to kind of, then we let the board know, okay, everything's as tidy as it can be. We don't even let them look at the grants until all that's done, because we'll get a billion questions before we're really ready for them to look at it. So then we set it out and say, okay, these are pretty and they're ready for you to look at now. And then they start rating them and ranking them. And then at the board meeting, then we're prepared to discuss them. Otherwise, we'd be spending hours at every board meeting, you know, picking through, and it would be huge. That process has been amazing. And I started with United Way in February of '22, and Amanda came 6 months after me. And we have made a lot of changes, and we have tried a lot of different things, all to make it as seamless as possible for you, and to make it as easy by the time it gets to our board that we're not having to advocate, because it's all right there. It's all just right there. Sometimes we'll do a site visit, and they come and say, we want to visit and see what you're doing, so we can make a better pitch for you to the board or whatever. But that's been beneficial in some cases. But our job is really to make things as pretty as they can before the board sees it. So not every organization has that process, and it's this last cycle we did was the most seamless that we've had. I'm like, okay, I think we might have this just about in the right place we want it. So we've been really trying hard to make it easy for you and good for the board. So what did I miss that you might need to know?
Well, we did have one issue come up last cycle that our grantee thought they attached all of their documents, and they uploaded everything, and they clicked the box, yes, I have attachments to add, and they, on their end, they were attached. When it came to us, we didn't get any of them. And so I saw that she clicked yes, so I reached out to her and I said, what are you trying to attach? Do you have anything? She's like, oh, I attached 6 or 7 things. I'm like, well, they didn't come through. So that's one of those things where she can email it to me directly, and then I can attach it to your application, and that we have that for the board to look at. So, but on her end, she thought it went through. I don't know what happened. She tried it since then, and it was fine. I don't know. It was one of those weird glitches, but like Denise said, I can see the applications in real time. So if you need 11 spots, if you need to upload something, let me know. I can do it right then. Everything is right then. Everything is live in real time. So if you come up with something, you can call me, you can email me, and we can walk through it together. I'm there. So any questions?
We really are nice. We really are. We're not trying to say, I think people are afraid because they're like, they're going to look for every reason to deny this. And we're like, no, we're looking for every reason to give everybody. So,
What was the last box, the anti-terrorism
Oh, yeah.
complaint?
yeah, we are under United Way Worldwide because United Way is a worldwide organization. There are some things we have to comply with, and one of those is the anti-terrorism statement, that you're going to certify that you're not doing any of those things. Should be down below. There you go. Oh, in compliance with the USA Patriot Act. So that's just part of the Patriot Act. And we didn't attach that, but the Patriot Act is something you really will know about. But we cannot fund anything that's for anyone who's going to be considered a threat to the United States, to the state of Arizona, to United Way of Graham and Greeley counties. I mean, that's not stated in the Patriot Act, but that's basically where we're going with that. So you're not going to do anything sideways that way. That's because that helps us be in compliance with United Way.
So that would be filled out, or you could use your principal again, as you did on the other one?
Yes, well, you could,
Could you represent yourself?
This can be yourself.
yeah, you can represent
It's okay.
yourself on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
You're
can be
not,
complete
we're
with
just
the
saying you're not a
grantee.
terrorist. You're not going to do anything crazy. This looks like a pretty safe girl. Just saying. So, Paulette, what did we miss that would be helpful for them to know?
Say something about field trips.
Okay.
You don't fund field trips.
We don't fund travel, correct?
Travel, we don't fund travel.
don't fund
It's
travel.
important for them to know, because I was starting to work with a teacher from Pima who was thinking of doing something with her, I think it was 4th grade class. And we backed off once we realized, and you had another application earlier for travel. So stay away from travel, that's a no-no. I'm going to say with all the grant programs that I write, I work with, this is the one for you. United Way, we are so fortunate to have United Way in Graham and Greeley counties. And to see that not only do they give, but they give to education. Not all of them do this, you know. That's the important thing to know. Every United Way gets to choose what their priorities are. And we are spoiled here in Graham and Greeley County to have this. And she's absolutely right. They're up to get you funded. So don't be afraid.
Yeah. Our donor dollars were not intended to sit in United Way's bank account. They were
That's
intended to
right.
make their way out into
To get out
donor.
there.
And
Yeah.
this year, I will tell you, we've made some changes, and we're really excited about those. Remember those restrictive cycles we talked about in the past? You could only apply for economic stability grants for the first quarter. I'm starting to forget because I was so glad to be done with those. Second quarter was, I believe, education. Third quarter was health. And fourth quarter was kind of hodgepodge. But what would happen is, say you're an educator, and that second grant cycle is March 1st to April 1st. And April 1st came, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get it submitted, or I forgot, or my kid got sick, and stuff, life happens, you know. And you missed that deadline. Then guess what? You have to wait a whole year. And we thought, wow, you have to wait a whole year to do that again. We thought, we just don't like that. So, last year in 2022, United Way funded about $2.1 million in Graham and Greenwood counties in all of our focus areas. That includes grants, sponsorships, all of those things. Grants big and small. This year, with our new cycles and with the outreach we've been doing, we're pretty excited. We are already at
We're already at
$2 million this year.
We're already at 2,001,349.
And some cents, probably.
And some cents.
We count the cents.
And that's only after 2 cycles.
That's
And
after
we
2
haven't
cycles.
hit holiday giving yet or any of those things.
Right,
so.
we do, yeah. So we're really making an effort to make sure that it's, our grant is our grant application is user-friendly, the cycles are not restrictive. We're making sure we get the word out about what we do and what we don't do. Paulette is one of our biggest cheerleaders and one of the champions for us. And also, you are very fortunate to have this lady because she helps steer you the right direction as well. She's not going to let you go a direction you shouldn't go, so use her.
If you're going to embark on a United Way grant and you want free assistance, that isn't Amanda, although that's assistance as well. If you want me to help you with it, we partner on it. And all you need to do is email me and we work on it. I have lost count of how many grants I've been behind over the years because I've been doing it for so long and have watched them grow and go through the painful decisions and then release them. I'm so thrilled that they've got their quarterlies now. So if you need any help at all with your grant, I will partner with you and help you get funded.
And call us. We've got business cards up here. If you want our cards, there's our information. Our phone numbers are on there. Please talk to us. Don't be afraid. That's the lesson of today. Don't be afraid. We're not a scary organization. We will really help you as much as we possibly can. You have other good helpers and advocates that are going to help you along the way.
I asked teachers once in a workshop like this, what word comes to mind when you think of writing a grant? And she used the word daunting. And it was wonderful. I kept that word. I said, it is. When you first go into something like this, it is daunting. And she ended up persisting and getting funded. And it wasn't daunting anymore. The word disappeared.
And I think probably Brittany and Noah, you can sort of speak to that a little bit because once you've done it and you've had some success at it, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't horrible. What was the hardest part for you? I'd like to hear from you. What was the most difficult part?
For me, it was the English part because when I'm writing, I always have that. My wife usually watches me because I write horribly. But someone walked me through the whole thing and changed my wording. Nice and right and concise. The budget to me was the easy part.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that budget was easy. Good.
He's a master budgeteer.
Good.
He is.
Yeah, I think putting together the wording and the paperwork, but she was like my right hand man. I sent it to her, and then she sent it back to me, told me what I needed to have, maybe have something look over it. Like, she was awesome.
Yeah.
And so, no, it wasn't hard at all.
Good,
It was super
good.
exciting too. I'm like, wow.
And one of Paulette's suggestions was in her session yesterday, and we'll be coming tomorrow because we always like to hear what's going on. But one of her suggestions was always have somebody else read through your grant application for you. Because like she said, when you're in it, and your grammar may be terrible. You may have forgotten something may not make any sense at all.
You really don't notice your own errors because you're so deep into it.
Yeah. So, But we're very excited about, and we're always excited to talk about United Way and what United Way does. And, you know, every day we get to see all the great things that are happening in our communities. And we see you teachers, and we know what you're doing, and we appreciate you, and trust me, we're advocating for you because you know, I know not everything you want to do in your classrooms is available to you. There's just not endless amounts of funding available to you. And I think it was you yesterday that, Paula, that you said if you're gonna work for an organization that's going to be government funded in any way, you're never going to have enough funding. So you're always gonna have to look for other sources of funding, and that's part of our responsibility to reach out and let you know what's available too. So. Anything else? Any other questions?
Did you say it's the 10th or the 1st of every month that is the deadline?
The 10th. For the $5,000 less grants.
And then, how are you notified? Either way? Yes, if you can, via email?
Well, actually, Amanda likes to call you because she's all excited. So she wants, so usually we send an email because we want a paper trail. You'll get an email, you'll get an award letter, and you might get a phone call.
You might get a phone call. I try to email because it's faster and I can just hurry up and shoot them out because I want to let you guys know as soon as possible.
Do the happy
If I have
dance.
a chance. Yeah, do the happy dance. I need to work on putting an emoji in the happy dance emoji. I put a smiley face. I'm like, congratulations. I try to make it as, you know, and I get a couple woohoos and then people get like, oh, I'm sorry for the woohoo. I'm like, no, we like woohoos. We're happy about woohoos. So I try to, I make sure I notify, our board meeting usually ends around noon, so between like noon and 2, I try to make sure everybody's notified, yes or no, as soon as possible. Because I know you guys are waiting to hear.
Yeah, we know everyone's
I try to make
anxious,
sure.
and we're excited, so we want you guys to know. And when she says between noon and 2, our board meetings are the 3rd Friday of every month. So like June, it's the 19th, 16th, something, whatever the 3rd Friday is. So anyone doing a grant this month, one of the small grants, it's going to pretty much know the day of that board meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Because we come out there, yay, we're all excited.
I go straight to my office.
She
Other
does.
people are chatty. I'm not super chatty.
She
I just
does.
go straight. 'cause
The
I'm
board
like, I need
members
to
are
get
all
these
mingling
people
around,
out.
yapping, and she's in there typing.
I gotta let people know.
She's so
I get
excited.
excited
We get
about
really
it.
excited to see them. We really do. And then we get to see what happens. And we know you're doing great things.
So I had a quick question about, because I think I got all my supplies in. It talks about, so the same two letter, of course, but it talks about posting it on social media. And what was the other thing? Oh, like once it's done. So once all my supplies are in and I have it set up, is that, okay.
We would really love to see pictures. And I know that there's, you know, as far as pictures with the kids in them, you need a release to be able for us to use pictures of them. But even their sweet little hands using what you've done, or maybe you don't have little ones, maybe sweet big hands. Or sometimes pesky big hands, because we know there's always those challenges out there. But we want to see what's happening in action with what you're doing, depending on what you're doing. Because we like to get those on our website too. Our donors like to see not just that we've doled out their money, they want to see what actually happened. You know, they want to see the building that was built, or the park, or the teacher in the classroom, or the whatever it might be. They want to see those actually in action, to see what's actually happened. We didn't just give the money and nothing happened. They want to see it, so send us pictures. Email them to us.
Pictures or like what's in the letter is give us a little breakdown of what happened afterwards. Like with yours with the seating, I think it was. Did you have classroom seating?
Yeah.
So like tell us like did it happen the way you wanted it to happen? Did the students get super excited about the additional seating or the options of seating or you know things like that? Whatever you requested that funding for, we just want a little summary of if it worked out the way you wanted it to work out. Just you know something like that. Nothing too crazy.
Because on the grants, the $5,000 or less grants, we don't require that true impact report that we talked about with the big grant. So this is kind of our version of an impact report. We want to know what happened. We want to see what happened. You know, chances are we're not going to march into your school unannounced and say, hey, if you want to go to these classrooms and see how our seating is working out, because they would be like, well, you're not allowed in here. And who are you? And so, yeah, we want to see what's happening.
We just like to know the outcome of what you guys were so excited about to you know request funding for. We want to know what happened afterwards.
Okay.
If your grant turns into a big event, you know, if you have a grand finale, invite the ladies, because guess what? They show up.
We love to go.
We go to all the school buses.
They go to the bus and
We're
Valley
always
Arts
like-
Council buses,
I love it.
you know, it's like they show up, so.
We will go to whatever we're invited to.
We love to go
Feel
see
free.
what you're doing. We love to go see what you're doing. We have a super fun job. We are in a really fun spot to, and it's, I don't want to say everything's balloons and confetti every day, but we really dig in, and when those grants come in, it's a lot of work, and we're digging and scraping and asking and emailing and calling and sweating. Sometimes we're sweating, depending on what, the committees tell us, but.
Sometimes it's quiet and we have to yell at each other, are you okay in there? You good?
Yeah.
Because our offices are opposite from each other. So
Yeah.
we're like, it gets real quiet. We're both focused.
Both reading
You all
and
right?
typing.
Yeah, we're good. We're just reading.
But